Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre. On this video, we're gonna take a look at a couple of posts from Am I the A-hole? Along with some user comments and short updates. So let's get started with the first story. This one is from user Angry Mama Bear 81917. Background. When I started dating my dear husband 6 years ago, he was a single dad to a 1-year-old who we'll call Ella, now 7. Her bio mom is not involved at all. Long story. I met her when she was 2, when the relationship was serious, and married when she was 3. To her, I've always been mom, and to me, she's my daughter, who I love more than anyone else. Ella has been glued to my side ever since, and I honestly love being a mom. I will legally adopt Ella in the near future. I'm still legally her stepmom, but we're gonna change that soon. I know it's just paper, but dear husband and I talked about it and decided it's important just in case anything happens to him. The issue. Dear husband owns a beach house a couple of hours outside of the city we live in. Due to the lockdown, we decided to stay there because there'd be more space and we can work from home anyway. I'm also 6 months pregnant. Dear husband, being the sweetheart that he is, invited my parents to stay with us since we had a lot of room and they lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment in the city. He also said that I could use the company because he's still very busy with work. My parents aren't that close to Ella yet, so dear husband and I thought this could be an opportunity for them to bond with her. Things were pretty okay for the first few months. My dad slowly started playing with Ella, but my mom hadn't really tried and instead fixates on my pregnancy. It all came to a head a few days ago when Ella ran down to the beach where I was reading. I asked my dad to watch her. She was crying hysterically, holding on to me tightly and begging me not to leave her. I was confused and asked her what was wrong. She said grandma told her that once the baby was born, I'd love the baby a lot more than her and that I'd slowly abandon her because she was just my stepchild and not really mine. Guys, I saw red. Once Ella started to calm down, I left her with dear husband, who took a break from work, no questions asked. God, this guy's amazing. And I proceeded to rip my mom a new one. I called her every name I could think of. Dear husband's office is soundproof because Ella can be loud herself. She then accused my stepdaughter of lying about the whole thing, and that was it for me. I told them to F off and pack their bags. That tried to calm me down, but I told them that no one had the right to insult my daughter in her own home. Dad kinda understood and started packing while mom just cried and begged me to think about it. They've since left, and I've got a ton of messages from them, my siblings, and aunts and uncles. I blocked them all. I've since alternated from comforting my daughter who still cries about it to being comforted by my husband, who has yet to say a single bad thing about my parents despite of what happened. Seriously, this guy is an absolute godsend. I've calmed down since and unblocked my sister, who I'm really close with. And she told me that while she understood where I was coming from, it was still an a-hole move to kick my parents out in the middle of a lockdown. My daughter is my priority though, so I feel like I made the right choice. But was I the a-hole for kicking my parents out? So let's begin with some of the user comments. Nut Michelle says, not the a-hole. Your mother is an absolute a-hole. To tell a small child something so horrible and untrue is psychopathic behavior. I wouldn't let this woman within screaming distance of my children ever again. And then Dare the Dragon Knights says, not the a-hole. I can't imagine how that one statement will affect her, Ella, from here on out. Kids are very impressionable. You have every right to be as angry as you are with your mom for what she said to her. Also, from what you said in your post, your parents weren't staying at your place out of necessity, but just because it would be nice to be together. They have their own apartment and they have overstayed their welcome in your house. You are absolutely not the a-hole for kicking them out of the house during lockdown. So the community has deemed her not the a-hole, and I absolutely agree. You love Ella like she was your own, which actually makes her your daughter. And you're gonna adopt her soon, so yeah, defend her as best as you can, even if it's from your parents. As a parent, you stick up for your family, and that is your children and your spouse. So yeah, I agree with you, you are not the a-hole. Now let's go take a look at an update. Ella hasn't really been the same since my mom said those words. She's been extra clingy to me and panics when I'm out of sight. She's been sleeping next to me and dear husband for the last few nights too. I really don't mind her being clingy, but it breaks my heart seeing her like this. She used to be so bubbly and cheerful, the one that brightens up my day the most. But now my little girl is like a shadow of her old self, and I'll never forgive my mother for doing that to my daughter. Dear husband and I are currently looking for a good therapist to help Ella deal with it, as some of you have suggested. I'll definitely give my dad a second chance, but only when Ella is ready and she wants to. I've been texting him and he's very apologetic for not standing up to my mom, so maybe our relationship is still salvageable. And yes, I'm definitely going no contact with my mom. If she can't love Ella, she has no right to be in my second kid's life. And there you go, a proper mama bear. Alright, and now let's move on to the second post. This one is from user alloallo3939. I'm 16 and have one sister who is 19. I'm closer with my mom and my sister is closer to my dad. It's just always been like that. She's the perfect daughter in his eyes because she's saving herself for marriage. And all the while, I'm more wild in his eyes. I'm not saying I'm boy crazy or anything. It's just his definition of wild is me wanting to get a second earring or a splash of color in my hair. I keep a diary. I love writing and it helps me vent. Last week, I saw a crumbled piece of Oreo in my closet. My sister loves Oreo and my dad always makes sure we are stocked with them even though she's the only one who eats them. I immediately accused her of snooping, which she denied, and then the dum-dum literally outs herself by mentioning my diary in her denial even though I didn't even bring it up. After more denials, she finally confesses that my dad put her up to it. So apparently my dad was worried I was being influenced by my friends to become bi. I'm not making this up. My dad asked my sister to read my diary to see if I was becoming bi. I'm not going to get into what was in there, but I was furious. Well, fair's fair, and guess who also keeps a diary? And guess who knows where she keeps it? So I did a bit of reading of my own. This isn't the am I the a-hole part. I already know I'm the a-hole for doing that and I don't care. She doesn't write in it much, but it was actually pretty boring. Ironically, her last entry was about reading my diary for my father and there's no mention of feeling guilty. But it was the other entry that led to all hell breaking loose in the house. She just referred to it in an unrelated passage, but it turns out that my dear religious father had an affair. My sister referred to it in the past tense, so I knew it was over, but I found out later it ended 4 or 5 years ago. I felt like a gigantic grenade had just gotten tossed into my family. Obviously, I'll never look at my dad the same way again. I agonized about it. I only confessed to my mother about reading my sister's diary to see if she would give me any indication whether she already knows about the affair. Either she doesn't know, or at least she doesn't know that my sister knows. At that point, I decided to let it go. Here's the am I the a-hole part. On Sunday, I didn't want to go to church because of lockdown. Predictably, my mother mentioned that my father wouldn't like that, and I said, maybe dad isn't as Christian as you think. That's where I effed up. She knew I read my sister's diary and must have put 2 and 2 together. My sister told me that mom confronted her and insisted on seeing the diary, and now my parents have been arguing and being cold to each other for 2 days straight. My sister says I'm evil for manipulating the situation so my mother would find out. I'm feeling super guilty for not just keeping my mouth shut. Am I the a-hole for potentially breaking apart my family? So now let's move on to some community comments. Sadie Lady 3 says, not the a-hole. You are an a-hole for reading the diary, but you already admitted to that. Your dad had the affair. Your dad started the whole diary snooping BS, and your dad, for whatever reason, decided to confide in his teenaged daughter about having an affair instead of his wife, which is all kinds of messed up. Your mother had the right to know, regardless of the other circumstances. And then Jessica Jones 2 says, not the a-hole. Who had the affair? Your dad. Who covered for him? Your sister. Who either knows and chooses to act like she doesn't or chooses not to see it? Your mom. Who's more worried about you being bi than the vows he took? Your dad. Who doesn't believe in your privacy? Your dad and your sister. Honestly, what you did was kind of karma in a way. While I don't condone reading others' journals, you're not asking about that bit, so not the a-hole. Edit. I know that the older sister was being manipulated, but at 19, you know better than to invade anyone's privacy. Yes, the fact that she knew about the affair and that her father has been manipulating her is terrible on her, but at some point, we become responsible for our actions too. I think it's bad karma for the dad. What happened to him is his own making. Of course, the whole situation is terrible and I feel sorry for OP, but OP is in no way responsible for her father's previous actions and manipulative ways. He gets the a-hole awards for everything. I absolutely agree with both comments. What's going on in your family is not your fault at all. The only one responsible here is your dad, and your sister carries a little bit of responsibility for enabling or covering up for him. Yeah, she's a grown woman, she should know better. It's not cool that you read her diary in retaliation, but you're not asking to be judged by that, so that doesn't really matter at this point. You are definitely not the a-hole. So now let's continue with two different updates that OP has left us. My mom just came to talk to me. This is worse than I thought. She didn't outright say it, but they are talking about divorce. It's hard to tell, but I think my dad is in the bedroom packing. I'm freaking out. My sister just confirmed my dad is staying in a hotel tonight. My mom is currently in her room and asked us to give her some space. My sister and I plan on insisting on a family meeting in the morning when everyone has had the chance to sleep on it. And here's the final update. I wish I had better news about my parents, but we are hoping that my mother comes around. It's just all so new for her, I think. My mother refused to have my father in the house, but she finally agreed to a Zoom meeting as long as she didn't have to see his face. She just stood off to the side during the whole call. My father is pretty much begging my mother for another chance. Basically, my mother said she hadn't been happy for a long time and has given up past opportunities to keep the sanctity of the marriage. Now that she knows that my father was playing by a different rulebook, she wants to pursue some of those opportunities. I know my father is an a-hole, but it was really hard seeing his face. I know what he looks like when he's holding back tears. I'm hoping my mother is just trying to teach him a lesson and will let him come back home. We still haven't told anyone else. I feel like as soon as we do, there will be no going back. This has been really hard for all of us. And that's it. Now that you got all the information, why don't you write down in the comment section how you think the mom should act? And so we've reached the end of the video. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, go ahead and click like. If you still haven't subscribed, go ahead and click subscribe and join this community. Also, don't forget to visit the Lost Genre subreddit where you'll be able to cross-post stories for me to feature in other videos or share your own if you feel comfortable enough to do it. And having said all that, I'll see you guys on the next video.